All right, thank you. So good morning, everyone. Reverend Gray is going to join us a little bit later. So I'm going to chair, or at least start us off this morning. First thing I'd like to do is approve the minutes. You probably got them later last evening. Wait, first we have to call roll. I'm sorry. Senator Nasheed. Alderman Vaccaro.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
With the setup, I can't see here. If we can answer.
Well, that's okay. I mean, as long as you can hear me, because I'm going to be in the car anyway.
Yeah, I got you. Alderman Boyd.
I'm here.
Okay. Catherine Norris. Let's see. Adolphus Pruitt.
Yeah, I'm here.
That is here. Tracy. Tracy Stanton.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just wanted to join us. Reverend Gray, are you on?
There's a chance you may have.
So we have a quorum, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. Minutes later last evening. Do you have any changes, or can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
Second.
Well, I want to be in
All of them. Say aye.
Aye.
And the minutes are approved. The agenda for today is to hear from the Public Defender's Office, Sheriff's Office, Expo, and the Honorable Corey Bush's office. And then go into closed session for any confidentiality or security.
and then you can help me with the policy. I'm going to put this.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve that agenda?
I'll make the motion. We approve the agenda.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Well, we have a couple of guests this morning. Our first guest is Matthew McCaffey from the Defender's Office. And thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate this. We've worked for about 3 weeks. We've interviewed staff, we've interviewed detainees, we've reviewed a lot of material. We had 2 public input sessions. And we're just trying to understand the process better about how this works, how COVID has impacted what everyone's doing, and you know, what barriers there are to moving cases forward, to getting people represented from your perspective, and you know what we might be able to help you with going forward. So I'm going to turn it over to you and present, and then I'll open it to just the committee members for any clarification questions. It is open to the public, so there are participants that are. I know you know a lot of confidential security stuff. I just want to warn you that it is open to the public right now. Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Matthew Mappy. If for any reason you can't hear me, I can move closer to the computer. So anyone that's Zoom wise, if I fade out, please let me know. Thanks for inviting me. And I'm the district defender for St. Louis City Public Defender Office. And we represent quite a number of individuals who are currently being housed at both the Justice Center and the workhouse. And I wanted to start, Mr. Hump was kind enough to engage me on what the guidelines were. And my goal is to give you just an overview that are based on the 3 task points that you've been asked to investigate today. Mostly the first 2 and primarily the second one, which is about the delays in the 22nd Judicial Circuit. I'm happy to take questions while I'm going if I can see them. And if I don't, if I miss them, that's not intentional. It is difficult to present with some people here, some people there. So please interrupt if you have questions. Otherwise, I'm happy to take them at the end as well. I did want to start off with a little bit just of an anecdote. I want to thank Reverend Gray, who I know is not here, for his recent op-ed in the paper. He said in there, "I'll help you where I can, and you help me where you can," which I want to, I guess, ask the committee to hold me accountable to that, to make sure that I'm always starting from a place that change is possible. Because as he acknowledged in his op-ed, there's been palpable frustration on behalf of the Public Defender's Office with regards to the task force, not at you as individuals, but as at what we feel is the limited power and mandate given to you to investigate, and to the fact that from our perspective, there's been no one was asked by the mayor's office from our office to be a part of it. And considering the number of people we represent in the jails right now, it would seem to be a valuable voice to consistently have at the table. So I'm hoping to present to you some truths that maybe you don't, from other people's perspectives. There are truths that maybe you don't hear of as much. And I hope also that in doing that, through your questions or any engagements, that I make sure I'm not doing what I hope we can all avoid, which is to react defensively as opposed to listening to what you have to say. And I was reminded of this week. I heard a song that I've heard 110 times in my life. And for the first time, I understood what it meant. And the reason I had been misinterpreting it before that is because I have so many deeply ingrained perceptions about how the world works. And when I realized that, I thought, this is the crux of the issue. Are we asking ourselves about what we hold deeply ingrained within ourselves as systems and individuals that are inflicting upon others harm and not good? I'm grossly imperfect and do that all the time. I have to imagine it's the same for other people, but that's the system we exist in. And I don't think a lot of our clients want to engage in that type of system because the way that they're being viewed is not a positive way. It wasn't positive before they even engaged in it, let alone when they get engaged in it. So my suggestion, my overarching wish for all of this is that we start extending more listening, compassion, patience, and unassuming questioning into our practice of law or social work or corrections or what have you, and that we start to get away from what is really present right now, which is defensiveness, protectionism, and volatile temperament explosions. So to task 1, going through these in order, and task 2 will be the one where I spend the majority of my time, but I'll take them in order. Task 1, I talked with Arch City Defenders again yesterday. There have been approximately 148 phone calls to their hotline regarding the conditions at the jails and concerns from mostly people incarcerated, but also family members of those incarcerated. A handful of those are duplicative. So the 148 is not all unique, but it's over 100 unique expressions of concern. And this is consistent with what our attorneys have heard from people that are housed as well. So one of the biggest concerns we've had, this happened again yesterday to one of our attorneys, is going to visit someone on the 5th floor, which I know you did not have access to, and only being allowed to stay for about 90 seconds before the pepper spray that was existed in their visiting area alone was too much and they had to return. That's the 3rd time I've had an attorney tell me that in the last couple of weeks. So I'm partially concerned about your inability to get to the 5th floor and think that that is something that needs to be investigated.
We did end up getting.
You did end up getting there? Okay, good. The report I read this morning hadn't said that, so I appreciate that. Also, with regards to COVID, the vast majority of the information we've been getting is people engaging with people that are either in unknown COVID states, but with pending tests or are COVID positive. We were able to secure some documentation. One of them, just as an anecdote, but to an explanation of what I'm talking about. We had one client who records we received that was tested on the 15th of December. The results for those tests were received on the 29th, so 14 days later. The results were positive. The client was quarantined during that part, but not during the entirety of that part. It was during about half of the 15th to the 29th, and then was quarantined another 2 weeks after the 29th while they did another test to determine if he was still positive. So during that time, he had engagements frequently with other people, and he was COVID positive, but it was a 2-week turnaround. I did inquire as to what the standard turnaround time was from the jail, who I believe, if I remember correctly, and Commissioner Glass, if he was here, he could correct me, but I'm pretty sure they put me in touch with the city, the mayor's office. I have not received information on what the timeline for testing is. I don't know if it's a consistent one, but that one was 14 days. The follow-up test he received took about 5 to get back. So that seemed to be a big concern for a lot of our clients as well. With regard to the delays, though, which is where I want to spend the majority of my time, the task, if I'm got it here, the need to begin moving cases through the 22nd Judicial Circuit and any other measures to address the isolation and uncertainty resulting from the halting of court cases for nearly 1 year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Some of you may have read Mr. Messenger's articles in the paper. That's a big issue for our clients right now. We ran an internal audit of our cases for both the 2020 calendar year and the 2019 calendar year. And the length of time that a client of ours spends in pretrial existence in the court system before a probable cause finding. So not the length of their case, but before just probable cause is determined, which the old adage throughout society has been, you can indict a ham sandwich. So before just the bare minimum of evidence has to be presented to establish probable cause to the court, or to suggest probable cause to the court, was 146 days for public defender clients, 139 days for the entire circuit during that time. And we ran our audit for 2019 and it was 126. So the pandemic's only been responsible for us, it's definitely an increase, but a slight increase, not one that it's not wholly responsible for what's going on there. I then followed up and asked OSCA, the Office of State Court Administrator, if they could get me data for the state. And they did this week. They got me data for the state. And that average is 139 days. So basically, we're at right around average, the average for the state in terms of how long people stay in the criminally legally involved before a probable cause determination is made and they can actually move forward to fight their case in circuit court. This, I have to believe, is this kind of data, I have to believe, is the reason that the rule was changed on March 1st and timelines were attached to it to say that for confined individuals, it's 30 days. For people that are on bond, it's 60. You've got to have a determination if a case is filed by complaint, which almost 100% of cases in St. Louis City are filed by complaint. So that's a huge part of us, of what's causing those delays. When a case gets to circuit court in the city of St. Louis, judges or individual judges have their dockets and they can schedule those cases for disposition, adjudication, trials, however they're going to resolve that as they individually decide to do with their dockets. But they don't get those cases. They're not getting those cases for almost 5 months. And then when they are at this point, obviously the circuit judges are getting those cases and they have existing cases that have been percolating during the time of COVID. And we're now at a year without jury trials. And that's a public health reality that we have to deal with. That is not, I don't think there's figures to be blamed there. That is what it is. But they're now having to balance new cases that aren't really that new with a caseload that's already existing that they haven't been able to move, sometimes just because of a pandemic. So that it's creating a big problem, which leads to the stat I saw Commissioner Glass in the paper, and he had told me this also previously, that the average length of stay in the jail right now, if I'm not mistaken, is 346 days. If all but 2 of those people, as I heard Commissioner Glass testify at the first commission meeting, are pre-trial detainees, a year pre-trial in a system that says that you're innocent until proven guilty that is a recipe for disaster all around. So that's a big piece of it. I think our associate circuit court practice with regards to the rules, in my opinion, has not been on point and has allowed for these delays. I think there's other issues down there as well in terms of how that's coming to be, and I'll touch on those in a minute, but that's the place I wanted to start from. Obviously, the second issue for us is detention, and that goes back to the 346 days that I just mentioned from Commissioner Glass as the average time that someone's remaining in the jail. So again, almost all of those individuals are pre-trial delays. So if you're fighting your case and you have a choice of fighting it from obviously a place of detention or a place of bond, the choice is much, it's obvious you want to do it from bond, but it's also consistent that if people are released, that the options available for them are increased, including the statistical dispositional outcomes that they receive. There's a ton of data on this from the Department of Justice to the Bureau Institute, which works with government agencies. When people are on bond, they secure better outcomes at disposition. And that is across the board regarding charge. It's not just focused on low level or low hanging fruit, as you know, it is across the board. If you have service availability for people and they are released, the outcomes are better. And the creativity allowed from attorneys are better too. And I think part of the issue that we see from the Public Defender's Office is the engagement of some individuals in the criminal legal system starts from a point of confinement. And it's always through a point of confinement. They are not known as someone other than someone being confined. You can get information and records and history and testimony from people that knew them in their life before that, but you never see them before that. And that's a damaging place for someone personally, and it's a much harder place for someone that's representing them to give a full picture of what is possible. And I would suggest to the committee that part of this delay is our societal inability to rethink what we think is possible for people engaged in the criminal legal system. So many of those individuals we view through a lens of fear first, or if even if it's not fear, it's an otherness. That is something they're engaged in, something that's other than me. I'm not part of that. They're other, therefore they are worse. As opposed to how can we make this system as useful for everyone and as productive and positive for everyone as possible? So I think detention status really matters. And there are ways I think creatively we can think about that we aren't from a judge standpoint, from a public defender standpoint. We need to be more creative too. Like we have onus on this too. But there's growing options. You've got tons of social justice organizations, right now in the community. The Bail Project came in, you've got places for people. There's a ton of other places. There's a growing, wonderful pretrial release program in the 22nd that the court has taken responsibility for implementing, and that has made great strides for us. But I think we're still thinking, we're implementing more services in our current existing way of thinking, as opposed to maybe broadening that out. And just as an example, in April, we'll launch an organization called the Freedom Community Center, run by Mike Milton from the Bail Project. And their goal is to think more about a restorative justice model, trauma-focused individuals available for people, substance abuse-focused individuals for people, mental health, community connections. But the goal is get people out of jail and get them engaged in a way that is self-identified for them, not just identified by power people, but that they have a role in identifying, and then watch the outcomes increase positively, both for them and for the community. So I'm sure it's shocking to hear the public defender say, but we need to think about the rate that we're incarcerating people, why we're doing it, not just what is the charge, but what is the mentality that led us to the point that we think that incarceration is needed. Because I think I believe we're over-incarcerating people right now, especially Black and brown people. And it goes to the point, if we're able to present clients hopeful possibilities, right? Not guaranteed outcomes, not promises we can't keep, but carrying self-determined possibilities for their personal growth, and presented that also to the court and the prosecutors as decreasing the risks that they see present, then the client's willingness to engage and move forward during what have to be an intimidating and scary time for them is greatly improved. My encouragement is that we continue to think about decarceration. Third point on the delays is transparency. Information for all of us is crucial. I know that's obviously something you are all attempting to get as much as you can with the limited mandate that you have been given. And our experience in the Public Defender's Office has been that people with power do not like to have their power reviewed in meaningful ways. Our clients have openly and honestly, for as long as I've been involved with Public Defender, shared their experiences in the jail, in the world, with the police, with social service organizations, just the trauma that they've experienced as well. And while I do want to acknowledge that we always receive a swift response when it comes to an email communication or a phone call from Commissioner Glass, he's always timely with that. And some of his staff as well, they get back to us quick. We are consistently stonewalled on things when we request records. And that's from the jail, it's from the police department, it's from the mayor's office. We recently had a sunshine request for records regarding policy and procedures around the use of force in the jails. And we were denied universally across the board for an exemption that it related to terrorist activity. Like all of it was related to terrorist activity, which is in the statute a way that they can get out of that. But it wasn't explained how it was related to that. And it seemed to me to be an end around to not get us information. So how this plays out tangibly to the point you're asking with delays, we can statistically, nationally, you get better results and quicker results when people are on bond. We seek to get people released after what happened in February based on the conditions that were presented to us as a jail. The response from a lot in the court was, give us what you have, tell us what you know, tangible data you can give. And in the associate court recently, they denied one of our cases, and the reason given was that everything presented was hearsay. It was coming from our client, and the anecdotal data we had also gathered from other clients that I thought had risen to the level to be pretty solid, but we didn't have data to back it up. Even data as simple as what is the use of tear gas or force within the jail. And that makes it impossible for a client to strongly, accurately, and effectively address some of the concerns that the court or the prosecution has with regards to detention status. And I think this is meaningful here because bond reductions are almost always based on hearsay in some ways, and our system default is already not to believe our clients. I feel that firmly. It's a default to not believe what they have to say. So if we can't even get factual information to attempt to assist, it's really hard for us to overcome the fear-driven approach that we are existing in right now. One more main point on the delays. Again, I think everyone has some responsibility here. A lot of jurisdictions with cases are issued, the circuit attorney's office will very quickly after that case is issued provide a beginning recommendation for what they think should happen in this case if the person were to dispose of the case in a plea of guilty, or maybe sometimes through a diversion program if that's what the rec is. But that rec would be received universally within probably 14 days, usually maybe 30. We have a tough time getting those, a really tough time getting recommendations very close to when a case gets going from the circuit attorney's office. And that does tangibly delay things because a client has a lot of options for how they can attack their case. One of them is obviously to plead. They can plead open to a judge. They could plead pursuant to a rec. They can have a trial. Those are the three main ones. If we're missing what the person charging them with, what the person choosing to charge them thinks the case should happen with the case, then we're blindly kind of trying to figure out, well, I don't know what to tell you. I don't even know what the power structure starting point is for us here. And that is a lot of uncertainty for a client in a situation that already has a lot of uncertainty and leads to a lot of, how do you even engage with something when something as simple as the recommendation for the alleged conduct is not given to you. So improving that would go a long ways for us, a long ways. And then lastly, and it goes back to my very first point, an enforcement of the rules by the court would just be phenomenal for us. There's two ways in Missouri to issue a case under the rules, by complaint or by indictment. If you issue by complaint, the rule says you're entitled to a preliminary hearing within 30 days confined, 60 days not confined. If you issue by indictment, then the case you've got a probable cause finding right there through a grand jury, and then the case can go. Practically, that would seem to be the most efficient way to do it, was if you're going to issue by indictment, you get the indictment, you issue the warrant, and the case begins, or a summons, whatever that is. The way the city has operated for as long as I've been associated with it is everything is issued by complaint, a warrant gets issued, and then the circuit attorney is allowed to tell the court how they're going to proceed, whether it's by preliminary hearing or grand jury. So what the tangible effect for our clients is this, besides just the delay that's happening, it is saying we're going to take a case to a grand jury, but we're going to file it by complaint, which is really, I can't think of another reason to do that other than to incarcerate someone pre-trial for a longer period of time. It doesn't make any sense otherwise. If you're going to a grand jury, then get, and you think you can get the indictment, then get it, issue the case, and start the case then. By issuing by complaint, waiting 150, 180, 210 days to bring down something from the grand jury, and the whole time saying, well, we're not going to set up for a prelim because it's a grand jury case, and the court allowing you to have that procedure, that creates these pretrial delays, which then end up being circuit court delays unnecessarily. If a case, I would love it if a case, if the circuit attorney knew this case was going to be a grand jury case, issue it when you have your indictment. Why are we criminally, legally involving people unnecessarily by issuing a case via complaint when we know the entire time they're never going to grant, they're never going to go for the preliminary hearing. Now, we just started a new rule. I've had some very good meetings with the associate court judges. I'm hopeful that maybe this will get enforced. But the old one said in a reasonable amount of time, and the statistics here say that we were at 126 days in 2019 and 141 in 2020 under the old rule. That is not a reasonable amount of time. If you're criminally legally involved, there's no way you can say that's a reasonable amount of time to wait to just get to the first place that you need to be to fight your case. So that's my overview of the delays. I've got one more point, and then I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions. The last point I want to make, which seems like a smaller one, but to me it's not. It's a microcosm, and this came directly from my staff, who is there just beyond brilliant. We have been getting consistent information from our confined clients that they aren't being given books from family members who bought them for them. This has been a consistent complaint for a long time. And I'm going to use some language from one of our attorneys here, and I don't want it to be associated with me because it's too good and they deserve credit. Every person in jails and prisons should have unbridled access to whatever literature they want to consume. And he goes on to mention about how at the height of the prison uprisings in the 70s, the state slowly and gradually moved to suppress what reading materials people incarcerated could have. To me, that is a microcosm of what I have shared with you today. To steal, I mean, again, to steal it directly from him, it seems we don't want any light to enter the minds of those that we hold captive, especially ideas that may help foment a new way of thinking about the world.
Looks like a fire alarm.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, is there a way you can mute until the sound goes away? Okay, that's better.
Is it a real alarm? Should they be
Right, that's-
evacuating?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I have to mute till the sound
No,
go away.
it just-
Is everything okay?
I think it's like we got that at City Hall. Sounds like a fire alarm.
Yeah.
I'm gonna mute this so you guys don't have to hear it.
I would just wonder if you guys are safe, if you should be
Hey.
checking if, fire, if they're evacuating.
We went and looked. Okay, it's done.
Yeah.
We're gonna continue.
Hey,
Yes,
Madam Chairman,
yes,
we have a very tight schedule this morning. And we have to go into executive session by 11 to deal with one of the recommendations. So we can move it along. It'd be real helpful because I think we're going to run out of time.
Yeah, we had an hour for the public defender, a half hour for the sheriff, a half hour for Expo, and Corey Bush's office, I think, is just going to read her letter into the record.
All right, thanks.
I think.
So we have plenty of time.
I think,
I wonder.
yeah, okay.
I promise I'm almost done though.
You're good, Matt.
No, don't do that.
So yeah, anyways, just to
At an hour.
quickly repeat what I ended with. I think the books are a microcosm of the issue here. We are, in my opinion, as a society, we are attempting to suppress any positive possible outcome for clients once they're charged in the criminal legal system. And I think we have got to rethink how we're going about this. And the last thing I want to share a story that is not mine. It's from John Rapping, who wrote the book Gideon's Promise, but he shared this with me recently at a training we were at. He was a public defender, was a public defender in DC for a while. He's running the Gideon's Promise. And he trains public defenders around the country. He took his children to the Natural History Museum of African American History in Washington, DC. And I don't know if you've ever been there. They start at the basement, they take you down there, and then you walk up through the last 400 years of oppression that the African American community has experienced in America. They got done. It was kind of exhausting. Went outside, and his kids were like, "Hey, can we go see where you went and practiced law at first? Like where you were a public defender?" He's like, "Yeah, we'll go there." So he said they walked over to the court, and he goes, "I went into the associate court area where we were, and I saw some people I knew. Of course, it's been a long time, so a lot of people I didn't know, but I saw people in positions that I used to work with, and there's a prosecutor, there's a public defender, and we sat down in the back and we watched the proceedings for a while. And eventually his son turned to him and said, 'This is just like the museum.'" That's where we're at. The criminal legal system is like the African American History Museum in Washington, DC. We are processing Black and brown people through a process with very little thought to what we are doing. It isn't enough for me that we rethink how we do things in the system. We need to be rethinking the system. That's what I've got. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And I would ask that, I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 specific recommendations that you made, and if you would, condense those.
Yes, I can send them. Yeah,
If you send them to Brad.
in English, as you said.
Yeah,
before.
please put them in English for people like me.
Okay.
And yeah, I really appreciate that. Brad, you got
I
a
have
question?
just a number of questions, follow-up questions for him
Okay.
when it's appropriate.
Okay. Are there people on the task force that have questions of clarification or follow-up?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Pruitt, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a number. So I want to make sure I'm clear about one thing. You mentioned about pre-trial and the length of stay. During the pre-trial period, are they your clients at that point in time?
Many times, yes, Mr. Pruitt, they are. Many times, yes. I mean, we can get clients. The public defender can represent people once they have been charged with a state level criminal offense and have applied for our services. So many times that is true.
Got it. Number 2, you mentioned that you spoke with the Arch City Defender and you gave a number of calls that they have received. Do you have any indication of the number of complaints that your clients have given to their public defenders?
Oh, so too many to count. But what we've tried to do, Mr. Pruitt, is pass those along. Well, we've asked clients, are they interested in contacting Arch City? And some of them had said to us, no, because they've expressed the reason is that they have feared retaliation if their name was attached to anything possibly. And then some have gone on. All 148 that they've received are not from our clients, but the vast majority are. But I would say on top of that, there's many more. I don't have a number for you, and I apologize for that. But there's many more that we've heard from expressing similar concerns, but did not want to be involved with going through a hotline process.
So I guess, so you all do or do not track complaints that you receive from your clients as relates to conditions that they are subject to within the CJC?
We do. So we do document them. I don't know if I could say we track them because we don't have a database. I mean, I'm sorry, we don't have a spreadsheet now that does that, but I could tell you, sir, we could do that. And it wouldn't be that difficult to pull that data out because our attorneys document the complaints from the clients and the information from the clients in the case that they're working on. So I know that we can find that information out as long as we have permission from our clients to share.
So if your clients are informing you that they are subject to some conditions that are harsh or detrimental to them health-wise or otherwise, when they file that complaint with you all, what happens at that point in time?
Great question. So typically we would explore with them what means of getting that heard by the jail they've done, figure out what those procedures are and provide them with that. In addition, we typically also use that information in bond review hearings because one of our biggest concerns obviously is detention status. And when people are being detained I mean, even in the conditions that maybe are okay, let alone conditions that are seeming egregious, we want to see if we can get them out. So we use that information many times in presenting to the court reasons why we think someone should be released. Also, we follow up, almost universally, we follow up with the jail via the information we've gotten from our clients. As long as, again, as we have permission to share from the client with the jail specifically through an email. And again, I could say Commissioner Glass is good at responding. We get responses from them, but we always follow up so that we have a documentation that we're going through follow-up with regards to those concerns.
And when you conduct the follow-ups or the thing you say, if the condition persists, what happens then?
The remedies aren't wonderful there, Mr. Pruitt. If the conditions persist, many times what it looks like on our part is just trying to persevere through communication and stubbornness to get something accomplished. I mean, the public defender's office doesn't have a lot of power to make things happen in the jails on behalf of our clients, but what we do have is the ability to continue to hopefully put their voice forward and needs forward.
So so if I'm a client of you guys, I'm in the system, I'm being subject to some detriments by being in the system that's caused by the jail, whether it's impacting my health, physically, mentally, or whatever. I tell you guys, listen, you represented me. These things are happening to me in the jail. I filed a complaint. You've also followed up with the commissioner and some other folks. Nothing happens. You telling me at that point in time, you do not have the ability. Let me ask a question. Can you not file a motion or something with the courts to try to compel that my treatment changes?
Yes, absolutely.
And so how many times are you aware, do you have any indication how many times members of the public defender's office representing clients who are suffering while in jail have filed a motion with the courts to try to abate the treatment or the condition that they are subject to?
Oh, I don't have a number, but that happens frequently.
And when,
Go ahead.
it'd be great if we can get that number. And when you do that, are the courts simply ignoring your motions or are they dismissing them? What has been the I guess the outcomes, if you can give me some indication of that?
So that's a complicated question. It's a good question and a complicated question. So it partially is complicated because every time those motions are heard, it's by a different judicial officer, right? It's one specific case, one specific situation. A complication on our end of getting things accomplished is if we're suggesting, if our client is telling us that they're not receiving medication consistently, let's use that as an example, and we bring that to the court's attention, the court can put in an order compelling the jail medical staff to provide, consistent medical care for them. But what does consistent medical care mean for Horizon to provide for a client? It might be different than the care the client was getting when they weren't incarcerated. It could involve a different medication that they're not willing to give them here. So it may be a response, Mr. Pruitt, from the jail that, well, here's, we are giving them proper medical care, and that might be true in the minds of what they're defining as proper medical care. But for our client, it might not be one meeting the needs or rising to what a consistent level of what it was before. So those are kind of the things that you get a response, right? But is it the one that is working towards the? Are you answering the same question that was asked? I guess.
So, and Madam Chair, I wrap up this way in the form of a question and a comment. Back in the days of the freedom suits here in the city, slaves filed motions with the court to basically say that they were free because of the laws and things like that. And the judges were able to give orders to their masters and tell them they can't touch them. As long as there are cases in the courts, they're to be treated like free people. You cannot touch them, and that persisted. And so what I'm trying to understand is that if we have people within the criminal justice system in our jails who are being treated as harsh conditions that slaves are, then I'm trying to understand, is it the courts that are not paying attention to the conditions that these people are suffering? Or is it the case that maybe their counsel are not filing the proper motions or filing motions at all with the courts to try to compel that their treatment changes? So I'm trying to understand and reconcile whether it's the attorneys that representing them, or is the courts ignoring the pleas and the motions from the attorneys that are the ones responsible for not stepping in and coming down with more force and might to ensure that people in the jails are not suffering from harsh conditions. And so, Madam Chair, that's where I'm at on it. I would love to get some understanding. Maybe he can submit something later, but it'd be great to hear something from the Public Defender's Office as relates to the number of motions that they are filing with the courts to try to compel the courts to deal with this issue. And it'd be great to understand what the court's responses have been.
And I will, Mr. Bird, I will get on getting that. I don't think that will be incredibly difficult to do. Briefly, to answer your good question, I think that as I started, I think there's a lot of self-reflection to go around here. I have no question in my mind that we can be more creative in how we are filing motions on behalf of our clients to consider the conditions. We did a bunch of that when after February 6th came. We flooded the court with motions for release based on the conditions that were given to us by our clients. So there were a number of those filed. I think also part of this is all of us, including our organization, we don't start from a place of belief. I mean, a lot of people don't believe what our clients are saying about the experiences they've had at the jail. I mean, a lot. And that's a lot of people in power too. So some of the responses that we get, the motions that we file would be responded to kind of disbelieving, because that's the place we're starting from. Not all of them for sure, but that I think it's multifaceted, and all of us share a role in improving it.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I think the senator had her hand up.
Yeah, we've got about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to just kind of run through the roll and give everybody a
Sure.
shot. Senator Nasheed.
Good morning. Is that Matt, correct?
Matthew, yes, ma'am.
Matthew? Matt, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to join us to discuss a very, very important issue here that's plaguing the city of St. Louis. I have just two questions. One question, Matt, is how many detainees do you all represent in the Justice Center?
Boy. So, Senator, that's a difficult question to answer. And the reason that it's a little more difficult to answer is that we used to be able to get a jail roster, an entire jail roster. Every day, we would get a jail roster that showed who was at CJC and who was at MSI. We have not been able to get that for about the last 2 years. They've moved to an online system called St. Louis City Inmate Locator, and you can punch one person in at a time. The complicated reason I can't answer your question, Senator, is because people keep getting shuffled to one place or the other based on COVID or an uprising or a resistance, and we're not informed when they're moved. We find out when we go to do our next visit where they are. So we have asked for a roster. We have never been given one. So I could answer your question very confidently if we had a roster that was accurate as to who was being held at what jails, but right now I don't have that.
Do you know how many public defenders are representing more than one detainee?
How many of our attorney staff, ma'am, are representing more than one detainee?
Correct.
We have 26 attorneys. I am confident and I'm not going on the limb when I say that every one of them represents more than one detainee.
Can you tell me if is there a problem with caseload within the public defender's office?
Ma'am, it's a wonderful question. I think that there's been a lot of exploration in Missouri over the last 10 years to show that the staffing levels of the public defenders throughout the state are suboptimal.
Do you think do you think that any of that would have a direct correlation to the conditions that's within the Justice Center as well as the workhouse?
Yes, ma'am. But more attorneys to represent people means lower caseloads for attorneys, means more attention can be given to clients, which means more of their needs can be addressed in a more efficient and effective manner, without question.
Okay. Do you know we spoke about this yesterday, Matt, do you know if any of those detainees have filed for speedy trials? And if so, how was it handled? Or if it was even approached?
A number of the speedy trial issues have been addressed by the courts during the course of the pandemic. There are some exceptions to the speedy trial rule that have been used during this time to extend it or to not enforce the 120-day rule. So there have been quite a few of them, ma'am. I don't have the number, Senator, on total. We have a lot of clients that file speedy trials.
Okay. So as a result of the filing of, I can hardly hear you, if you can repeat it. After the filing of the speedy trial, what happens after that? Do they get a speedy trial or they're still there for an additional 120 days or to 2 years or what?
So good question. So after that, if a speedy trial were run and it would be told or stopped or the case would continue to move on without that having happened, it becomes at that point an individual division decision. How long out does the next continuance go? Are we, we'll set it for trial again. How far out are we going? I guess that the cases continue at that point. And obviously, at that point, we're trying to figure out if we can do a release review, especially for those incarcerated. We want a release review at that point too, so at least they could fight their cases out. But the cases just continue to exist on a date in the future.
Okay. And again, you have had a problem with getting the number of detainees that the public defender's office represent. So that is an issue. No further questions, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Pastor Norris, do you have any questions? Okay. Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. Matt, I want to just say I feel your passion. I appreciate your testimony this morning. You give me hope that, people who are represented by the public defender's office really have people that are championing their cause. So I just want to thank you for your service, your great work. I've listened to you attentively this morning, and I am very enlightened and inspired. So just thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. That's very kind. I appreciate that.
Tracy, do you have any questions?
Yes, I just have one question, and then thank you, Matt, again for everything that you all do with the Public Defender's Office. You know, I know firsthand how adamant you all about assisting your client. I want to ask you about the times that you were able to visit some people inside of CJC. What was the physical condition from you all's, or have you heard from yourself and other attorneys about how the detainees appeared in appearance wise?
So I was able to, thanks Tracy, I was able to visit 3 or 4 the week after the February 6th uprising, and it varied. There were a couple people I saw that were, and I told this to the court too, we actually put this in motion to the court, but they were visibly, to me, a little more pale than we normally see. And a couple of them needed to have chairs to sit down, and they were saying that it was the lack of water availability, the lack of food, and the lack of consistent sleep or comfort sleep based on both temperature and bedding was a big problem. And that seemed to persist on 5. And I dare say it seems to persist on 5 up until yesterday, just checking in with attorneys yesterday with one that went up to the floor to see someone, and as I said earlier, had to leave because of the pepper spray. We had other attorneys, obviously, that went too that weren't me. I can speak to the ones that I saw, but the general consensus was a very real concern with regards to not just their physical, but their emotional well-being.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Matt.
Alderman Vaccaro, are you still on? You have any questions?
No, I'm doing fine. I'm just listening.
Mr.
Interesting.
Chairman, were you able to join us yet? Mr. Hoppy, you got questions? I think?
I just like to know your involvement with the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council and what your thoughts are on how that is working and what can that effectively address the issues that are at hand.
So I've been a member of that for a while. I've attended a number of meetings. There have been many that I have missed due to other court obligations. I like the idea of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. Many of the people on there are doing some really great work. I think the leadership is intentional in what they're setting forth as the goals. I will admit I haven't seen much in the way of production on the ground that has changed the trajectory or options available for our clients.
The other question I would have is, does the city or the courts or at any level, are there any risk and needs assessment tools used for the detainees at all? Like objective data tools?
Yes, and I think the person that would be better able to give you that would be Sarah Phillips from the pretrial office. She's wonderful, an incredible resource, social worker. So I know that there are some tools used there. The circuit attorney's office uses some tools when they're doing their diversion evaluations, but we aren't obviously the implementers of those. So I know that they exist. I don't know to what extent and how they are used. And I think if I know you could get those answers from people in pretrial, I think.
Thank you.
Have I missed anyone? Is Pastor Norris on? Okay. All right. I think that's it for this presentation. And again, thank you so much. And we look forward to getting your recommendations.
Absolutely. And I get those to Brad. Is that,
yes.
okay.
And our process is we're going to try to get the draft report to the committee by Tuesday. It's not public at that point, and they will be given whatever time they need to edit, get us back, and then we're hoping that we can vote the final product.
Okay, so by Tuesday for sure I can get that. Okay. Thank you all very much. I appreciate the efforts and I appreciate the time. If there's any follow-up needed whatsoever, please don't hesitate. This is obviously an issue that is incredibly important to our clients, and I believe our clients to be people of worthy and of value in exploring this to the greatest extent we can. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. The next presenter on our agenda is from the sheriff's office, and I know there are a couple of people on Zoom from their office. If you would please introduce yourselves, I would appreciate that.
Sorry, can you hear us now?
Oh, yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Thank-
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Captain Dawn Kehoe-Roop.
And Lieutenant Michael Gamache. Gamache.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Kind of heard what we're doing as we talk to the Public Defender's Office. We're really trying to understand the process of how people come in and out of the system. Things working or not working. We have specific charges around food, water, temperature, and clothing. The second one is around the length of stay and how people are transported, get released.
Okay, is there any way you can come a little closer to the microphone? We're having a hard time hearing you at this point.
Okay, sorry. I actually can take my mask off. Okay, and the second charge is around the length of stay and how COVID impact that and the stressors that that might be creating. How people move in and out of this facility and are transported within this facility. Has jurisdiction over what and what detainees at what time. So just sort of walk us through the process, identify any challenges that you're having, how that might have changed as a result of COVID, and any recommendations or ideas you have for us for how things might improve. We've got a half an hour dedicated to this, and then after the presentation, I will open it up for questions like I did with the public defender.
So some of the movements that you're speaking of actually happen with the corrections officer under the direction of Commissioner Glass. So we wouldn't be able to comment on those, but a general idea of detainees when they come in from the police department, their initial arrest, they are booked downstairs with the police department before they're moved to the second floor in corrections. We don't receive those detainees until they are put on the state docket, and that's done again by the police department, and they are then called to court for their initial appearance.
And then, what's your role at that point?
Our role is to take them in front of the judge for their initial appearance.
How does what you do here differ from other jurisdictions? Do you know? Do we do this the same here as what your role might be in the county?
I'm sorry, we're getting like every other word. I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
How might your role differ in the city than sheriff's departments in other jurisdictions, like maybe St. Louis County or surrounding jurisdictions?
St. Louis County, they actually have bailiffs that are just in charge of the courtroom. Their St. Louis Sheriff's Department is in charge of their civil process unit. That's what they do out there. We actually handle the court, civil process, transportation, hospital details, any of that.
Okay. Anything that I'm missing?
Is there anything that you want to just present to us, concerns or process-wise, or anything that you, based on what you are aware of that we are doing, anything that you want to make us aware of generally?
I don't know of anything generally because there are places in the jail that we don't see on a regular basis either. When we are getting the detainees, there's usually only a couple of areas that we are privy to because those are areas that we need to get detainees from and take them to court.
Okay, Our chairman, Reverend Gray, is not gonna be able to join us till later, but he sent me some questions, so I'm gonna ask in his name, these questions. One is it true that the sheriff in most Missouri counties is the chief jailer by state statute? We've heard that, but we don't know if that's true.
That is true.
Yes.
That's a difference with St. Louis City. And that's an exemption in state statute.
Not only that about them being the chief jailer, they're usually the primary law enforcement in their county.
So
We are not.
So they don't deal with the police department issue so much.
Correct.
Did you play a role in the incidents that occurred?
We responded to the incidents that occurred, yes, after we were notified by the jail.
Do you have a written process for that? Or an agreement that you will do that?
We do not at this time. At this time, the sheriff is reviewing it with his legal authority, and he's going to get with the city and find out what our response is going to be in the future.
Did you have sheriff's officers in the jail at the time, or did they have to come, from the field or from the city courts building where you're housed? How fast could you get here?
Well, for those particular incidents, the majority of the courts were closed on those incidents. We called people in from their homes on their recreation days to respond.
And how many were you able to call in?
The first incident, I believe, occurred during work hours, so there were still many bodies here. I don't know exactly how many. On the second incident, maybe 40 to 50, and on the last one, I think we were able to get a total of 80 here,
Okay,
and that was some clerical personnel as well.
that's awesome, great. Okay. And how do you feel about how that worked, and do you believe you were critical to that process of containing the situation?
Well, to be honest with you, we were the main ones that took over. When the police department arrived, they pretty much told us that they felt it was our responsibility to take over. So they were there to back us up and support us. So the sheriff's office were the first ones in the cells during that time for the extraction. And right now, that's where the confusion is on the sheriff's behalf, what he believes is our responsibility or the police responsibility, and that's all up in legal right now.
So, yeah, that was the next question he had. Is it in your budget, in your authority?
It's absolutely not in our budget.
No.
So authority-wise, we do feel that when the inmates are in custody, they basically are sheriff's prisoners. Once the warrant's placed, they become a sheriff prisoner, although they're housed in the jail. So it's kind of that fine line right there, who's got the ultimate control over that inmate once they're confined.
So, and he also asked, why isn't the sheriff's department transporting detainees? But I think you have addressed that. Your transport's primarily court-related, and nobody's going to court, right?
Well, it is court-related, and we are taking them. They're not going physically to a courtroom. We do multiple video conferences daily for all different divisions within the circuit. So today we may have 12. Tomorrow there may be 15, but they are going to court on a routine basis. And when I say court, video.
So you come and get them and take them to a video room?
Correct. We have 3 video rooms at the Justice Center, and then we have 1 video room down at MSI. And those are scheduled through the scheduler with the 22nd Circuit as to each judge's request. They'll call them up upon their request.
Do you have any role with the detainees that are being held on the 2nd floor?
Are you meaning the ones that will eventually come to the initial appearance? Because any detainees that are held on the 2nd floor, not all of those will necessarily come to court. Some of them will end up being released from there before we ever even see them. So when we're talking somebody who will not be released, either doesn't have a bond or needs to see the judge before they get a bond issued to them, those are the detainees we see. Those are the ones that end up on that state docket that we were talking about that the police department issues.
Okay. Okay. All right, those were my questions. I'm going to go around the, our roll again to give everybody else an opportunity to question in the same order I kind of did last time. Mr. Pruitt, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I got a couple of, I'm trying to understand. So let me ask you, when, in the holding area, when the detainees are in these holding, there's 3 holding pods or whatever you want to call them, are they in your control? Are they in the corrections department control? Or are they in the police department's control? Who do those detainees belong to?
Are you referring to the second floor in the transfer hold area, those 3 cells?
Yes.
Those are corrections.
Those corrections.
Soon as, yes.
And they become your responsibility when?
Once we take them to court and we sign for the warrants that they're on the state docket for, they become ours. Once they're seen by that judge and that process where they've had their initial appearance, they're ours. We've moved them physically from point A to point B.
And so you got them, they go before the state docket, they take them before the judge, and when you bring them back, do they go back to that holding area?
They go back to the corrections, and I don't know where they move them from there and how they determine which pod they go to from there.
Got it.
They all go back into corrections custody at that time.
Got it. And number 2, when you get them, do you make note of their physical condition when you move them around and get them?
So, if we feel somebody's not fit for confinement at that particular time, and we're talking about new arrestees, not the people who come down in orange jumpsuits.
Sure.
So these are people in regular clothes still. If we feel that they have medical issues that hasn't been taken care of, addressed, we will refuse that person until that person has been taking care of their medical needs.
And have you seen a lot of that? Do you see a lot of that when you get them that you have to refuse them?
No, sir.
No, you don't. And one last question, my assumption is when you get them, the detainees, they may share with you the things they're going through while they in the jail. Do they share that with you, and have you received complaints from them about their conditions and treatment?
For the most part, we don't really get too many complaints from them. Anything that we do get, we would address, but there's not many complaints brought to on our behalf.
Got it. I'm done, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Nasheed, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. First and foremost, let me just thank you too for coming before the committee. I just have 2 questions or 3. The first question, is it your primary duty as a sheriff to transport and oversee the courts?
Yes, that is our primary role.
That's your primary role.
To handle that within the 22nd Judicial Circuit, yes.
Okay. The second question, you mentioned that you said that you played a role in the uprise, right? Did I hear you say that? That you all played a role in it? You responded to the uprise. Okay. Now I do know that I passed a piece of legislation years back to allow for you all to be post-certified. But do any of you post-certified as of today to serve as law enforcement officers?
Yes, ma'am. We have 4 with 2 currently going through training.
Were those the individuals that was deployed to go out and handle that situation, or was it individuals that that's still not post-certified?
It was both. It was a mix of both.
And what role did you play when you arrived there?
So when we got the phone call, we initially came in. Again, it was a question about who was going to take over, the police department or the sheriff's office. Corrections had already stepped to the side and said, they couldn't handle it. At the time, the police department decided that it was going to be the sheriff's role to go in, and that's what happened.
So how do they decide, I mean, how do they dictate it's gonna be the sheriff's role when you all have two duties under the law, and that is to transport and to oversee the courts?
That's the question we're all trying to find out, ma'am.
And after, so when they ask you, when they ask you all to be deployed there, you did it without hesitation because you did, I don't, and the courts is gonna figure it out. So you all just did it without hesitation, even though you don't believe that that's your role or your duty.
Well, I mean, again, we believe it's our prisoners at the time. They are sheriff prisoners.
So if they're sheriff prisoners at the time, why don't you have authority to go into other areas except just one area?
We would like to know that as well.
Correct.
It has definitely been we call when we need, but we're not going to share everything. And we've kind of hung in this gray area for a very long time. And as you said, we responded because we felt there was a need and we were asked to provide aid, not necessarily because it's written that we are to be the ones responding.
Well, but if you say that you basically said you all oversee the prison. You just said that.
We don't oversee it. So anytime a person gets arrested and we receive that warrant, when we sign for that warrant, we're accepting that person as a state prisoner, as a sheriff inmate.
But that's only for the warrant, right?
Correct.
So
once we sign
you don't
the person
have no authority. So if you don't have a warrant, you don't then have any authority over what happens and what goes on in the Justice Department until that warrant is issued, and then they have to go to the courts. Correct?
Correct.
There's a lot of confusion there, but okay. Thank you.
Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions?
I want to ask the question about some of the confusion that was experienced with the holding cell. And I apologize if it was already talked about for about several minutes. I was having difficulty hearing anything. Can you tell me what your responsibility is within the holding cell?
Are we talking about the second floor? Is that where the open seating is? Because sorry.
The holding cell where the police bring them in and they haven't really been charged with anything yet. Yesterday I found out, so there's 3, I guess, holding cells. So does that make sense to what I'm talking about?
On the first floor or second floor? That would better determine it. You don't know.
Pam, what floor is it on?
It's the second floor, and there are 3 cells there that one of them had 12 people in it.
So I don't know and can't speak to how corrections divides them. Those are their prisoners until we sign for the warrant of some of them. I can't say all of them because not all of them will make it to our state docket, to our state court docket, okay? So when they do make it to our state court docket, we will sign for their warrants, we will accept the bodies, and we will take them to the video courtroom, which is located in the stage and release area.
Okay, and until then, you have absolutely no jurisdiction or no authority over processing them for any reason whatsoever, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
Alderman Morrow, do you have any questions? Tracy, do you have any questions?
No, I think Mr. Pruitt basically handled the questions the concerns that I had about whose role and responsibility it was for the detainees that were being held on the second floor. And then Ms. Nasheed basically cleared up as far as them responding to the actual event. Those were my 2 concerns. So I basically got the questions that I had answered, and thank those 2 for posing those questions.
Okay, thank you. Pastor Vaccaro, are you here, Alderman? Pastor Doyle?
Yeah, I'm here now. It kicked me off for a second. I don't know why.
Oh, okay. If you're back, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. Well, this speaks to what I had said before.
We're unable to hear you, Alderman Vaccaro. Pastor Norris, are you able to join us? Alderman Vaccaro, we cannot hear you.
Pam, I think he's driving and he's probably going in.
I think he's losing the signal. Mr. Hunt, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Just for clarification, on the second floor, where the detainees are in, already dressed in uniforms and they're in the seating area, I understand they are in corrections custody here at that time, but in the wing, prior to that area, there's holding cells where the detainees are in civilian clothes yet, and they're stacked in those cells. Those are under police custody, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, those are the ones that we're talking about on the state docket, that they will move from the first floor when, upon their initial arrest. They will move from the first floor up to the second floor so that we can eventually get them on our state docket and move to their initial appearance.
So those are not in corrections care yet.
They are technically
They
in
are.
police custody.
They're in police custody, but the corrections are there overseeing them. It's not the prisoner processing unit that's there watching them.
Okay, so police custody, but corrections has to watch them.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay,
Pam,
yes.
can I just have a follow-up because Jamila asked a question and it really raised a thought. So I want to make sure I'm clear. You all said that and I'm assuming you were called in only for this January the 6th incident, not the two in the one in December, I think one in October.
We were called for all three, sir.
All three. And so,
Yes.
and when you got called for the first one, did the issue about that you wrestling with now about who has control and command, did it come up during the first one?
It's come up each time. That's why we would love for there to finally be some type of resolution moving forward in the future.
Got it. All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you both very, very much for meeting with us and helping clarify some of the things that we're hearing and trying to understand about what happens to detainees and arrestees in our system.
Pam,
Yes, ma'am.
is any of this being recorded or written down of the testimonies?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it being recorded?
All of it.
It's being
Thanks.
recorded and I'm taking notes.
Thank you.
One final question. Do you have any specific recommendations for improvement you'd like us to consider or possibly include in our report?
I don't have any recommendations, but I would like to tell you two concerns that we have. One, the amount of overdose inmates that we have to take out to the hospital on a regular basis. You know, where are these drugs coming in from? How are they getting into the facility? I can tell you on firsthand knowledge of me seeing it, and I've brought this to the attention of other people, correctional officers walking through the metal detector and just beeping and just continue walking through with nobody checking their bags. So, I mean, somehow these drugs are being brought into the institution, and without stopping everybody and checking them properly before they come in for their shift is a safety hazard. And the second concern is just speaking with other officers over at the jail, correctional officers and inmates. You have correctional officers who don't feel safe coming to work anymore, and you have inmates who don't feel safe over there as well. And those are two issues that have to be addressed. You have to make the staff feel safe, so therefore the inmates feel safe.
Pam? Pam, I have a brief question.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thanks for enlightening us on that because we've been hearing that as well. My question to you is this here. You mentioned that you brought it to someone's attention. Can you tell us who attention did you bring this to, those concerns?
We've talking with the sheriff about it, and he's been trying to reach corrections as far as I know to see what their true policy is and where they're lacking on it, why they stopped whatever they've been doing previously.
So when you brought it to the sheriff, what did the sheriff do after he obtained that information?
I can't speak on the sheriff. I know he was trying to get a hold of Dale Glass. This was just within a few days that I had notified him of what I've observed.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I did. That's the only comment question I had. It seems like there's several different authorities that decide whether it's corrections, whether it's the marshals, whether it's the sheriffs. You know, how do we get that under one group that makes a decision? Because again, during that uprising, it was a question, is that a police? And the police are like, well, no, it's the sheriff. And the sheriff's like, well, no. The jail has a thing up on the top floor that they're supposed to take care of these things. I mean, it seems to me like, you know, there's too many different entities with no one person. I know CJCC is supposed to be figuring all this out, but I mean, does that seem to be the problem?
If you're asking us, that's one of our large concerns. We would like that addressed so that we can all help each other, but know who has what responsibilities and what duties.
Right, that's what I hear from workers, that it's like a giant power struggle down there, or who's who, or this is mine, this is yours, we don't want this.
Well, I do know that Glass has a team that is set up for that, but according to him, there's only, I think, 12 people that he said that are on that response team.
Right,
And in spite of, I'm sorry?
They're on the top floor, right?
I don't even know where they are, honestly. I know that he told us he has 12 that respond to those incidents when they arise.
So how many deputies did you have to send in during the uprising? Were there any additional deputies sent in for the uprising?
We had about 80 here, but they weren't all sent in. We had different teams because we were having to move, well, the last trip was 60 bodies, 60 plus bodies down to MSI. So we had to have, sorry.
I'm sorry, that was after the uprising and you moved people from one to the other. But in calming the uprising, actually physically in the uprising, trying to get it back, any deputy in that.
I'm sorry,
that's what the sheriff does.
You're fading out, but I think that what you're asking us, the number that responded to the actual unit for the uprising, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I would say approximately 15.
We've lost you again, Alderman Vaccaro, so I'm going to go to Brad for one more question.
Last question I have, just to clarify, when you say that staff and inmates don't feel safe currently at the Justice Center, is that, if you haven't been told, but is that due to the staffing crisis, the overcrowding, all the above plus other things, or can you tell us what the surrounding concerns are?
Like you said, all of the above, sir. You know, to my knowledge, they got one officer per living area on the floor. So you got basically 4 officers on each floor with 1 lieutenant.
All right, thank you both. I'm going to let you go in order for us to keep on schedule, but invite you to submit anything in writing after you think about it, talk to the sheriff that you want us to know, or specific recommendations you'd like us to consider. If you do those to us, before, over the weekend or by Monday, we will certainly consider that. So,
Thank you.
okay, task force, the next thing on our agenda was 30 minutes to hear from Expo. Our representatives from Expo on the Zoom meeting at this point.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Thank you. I know you prepared a presentation, and I want to just give you that option to do that, and then I'll go around our task forces you've seen me do for our other guests and give them an opportunity to ask clarifying questions. So thank you so much for being here. I think your voice is incredibly important, and you have information we want to hear and we need to hear. So thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to you. And if you would please introduce yourself to the whole team.
Sure. My name is Untitled Chapter, and I just want to thank the task force for giving us the opportunity to not only present here today, but actually have on the task force.
I'm sorry, but we're having trouble hearing you.
I'm sorry. I said my name is Latrell Stanton, and I just wanted to thank the task force for giving Expo St. Louis the opportunity to present here today, and also the opportunity to be on the task force. It's only for the last week or so of the task force, but it's much appreciated. And so we're here to speak about what we've heard from inside of the Criminal Justice Center. And but before I talk about that, I'd just like to say that the fact that even without the overcrowding, the detainees at CJC will be unable to socially distance. And for the city to shut down restaurants and bars and give special instructions to gyms and metro buses, so there'd be no real effort or plan for them to socially distance, it just shows the stance of the city and the CJC management towards the safety of the detainees. So I know I have limited time, and I want to focus on the most common threads that people that we hear from inside of CJC talk about.
Can you move just a little closer to the mic?
Yeah. Can the rest of the task force hear her here, or is it just us?
Couldn't hear him at first, but it got clearer once he scooted up. What about you? What about you guys?
It was still difficult. So the closest.
I'll try to speak up as loud as I can.
Sorry.
No problem. So the first call I want to play is just someone speaking about what it's like to live in CJC amongst the coronavirus. So bear with me. I hope you'll be able to hear this.
Are you playing something right now?
If you're playing a testimony, we can't hear it.
I'm sorry, y'all can't hear that?
No.
All right, hold on one second.
certainly email us the links. If you
Yeah.
want.
You guys hear that?
Unfortunately, we still can't hear it. Would it be possible to email us the links to that testimony?
Okay, sure. All right, well, basically the first gentleman just was speaking about how there's no effort by the correctional staff to take COVID-19 seriously, that they all joke about it, and they actually, use it to tease the detainees. They basically, or ignoring their rights and acting like it's not an issue within the prison. What we're seeing is that detainees are very stressed. They seem to get sick, and not only are they distressed on the actual virus, but they also distressed that they'll be put in isolation and no one will respond when they have symptoms. So a lot of detainees are afraid to even really report if they have symptoms because they're afraid of being put in isolation and not having anyone to call when they are ill or sick or being upset. They just basically feel like their rights are getting trampled on and they're not being treated as human beings. I will email you guys those files, audio files. I do apologize if they ain't working. So secondly, basically, listening to these calls, the one thing that you will hear from all of them is just desperation in their voices. And I really encourage you guys to listen to those audio files. But no one that we're speaking to, like, is asking to be set free. The only thing that they ask for is for either somebody who fits within the requirements of at risk, like elderly people and people with underlying conditions. They ask for them to be released in order to create more space. But they see the news and they understand the things that are supposed to be done in order to protect them from COVID-19, and they don't really see the institution itself taking any of those steps. We know, other states are releasing people that's supposed to their outdate. Not only that, you have people in the Justice Center that they're into probation violations and misdemeanors. And with the court system so slow, because we do have detainees that are saying that no one is going to court. So I don't know exactly, but that's what they're saying. They really feel like that they're there indefinitely and there's no end in sight. They have removed visits. They barely have rest, and they're not doing any social distancing, and there's really no concern for the mental state of detainees. These were 3 incidents within a matter of months, and management doesn't see anything wrong with what they're doing. The next call was basically someone from the whole that was basically, he was stepped in. He really didn't even participate in the uprising at all. He was just swept up in it, and now he's in the hole. They haven't received any new clothes. They're being pepper sprayed endlessly. We have a lot of reports of people saying that they were pepper sprayed excessively, and said that certain staff members would spray them unprovoked while they were in their cell, and they're left in the clothing and the area where the bear mace or whatever type of mace they're using, if they say it's really strong, they're left there to linger in that. Of course, the more you're around it, the more you breathe it in, the more it's going to affect you. We have multiple reports from different people that on the day of the 6th, that there were people that had seizures and were unattended for minutes. And we hear that they have not been given any clean clothing, that they're still, as of the 25th of February, they were still in the same clothing that they had been pepper sprayed in. And is COVID-19 is the number one thing that we hear from people in the CJC. Then the number two thing would probably be the excessive pepper spraying. They are saying that they are having after effects from the pepper spray, that they are having constant headaches and nosebleeds, and there's people that are having respiratory issues because of the mace. And like I said, they're saying that there are certain individuals that go around pepper spraying people unprovoked, just picking people, and they're saying that they put them in the visiting room, they take them in the visiting room and just pepper spray them in there and leave them there. And so I even have one report saying that there's not all of the COs, it's just a certain amount of them, but the other COs do not want to say anything because they get called inmate lovers. Almost like what, they used to say in the slave days. So, I mean, we feel at Expo like there needs to be a change in staff, most definitely, and maybe leadership, and definitely a change in culture. It seems as if, COVID-19 has pressurized the system. They grounded the system to a halt. They set them off from their families, and they're being treated inhumanely. And there has been created an adversarial nature between the staff and some of the detainees that allow the staff to become bullies and even abuse people. We have a member of Expo, Mr. Eric Ware, and he testifies that he saw someone die in the Justice Center, and they're not paying any attention to him. So, in closing, basically, what we want is for the inmates at CJC to all have a full medical checkup. We don't want them to have to fill out an MSR because those things can get lost in the shuffle, and that doesn't mean anything. We need medical teams to go in there and examine each one of the inmates. We also want the officers who are abusing and bullying detainees to be fired. We want regular visits to be done. We want legal procedures to be done. And we want a long-term plan for a permanent solution, which is to close the workhouse and treat detainees humanely in accordance with their human rights, at least eliminate cash bail, and speed up the court system. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. Your input is incredibly important and valuable to helping us with this work. Will you be able to submit a summary of your testimony to us, do you think, in writing?
Yes, I can submit a summary of my testimony and what I've heard from the detainees and CJC, and also include those audio files.
That would be very helpful. And if you can provide any links to any of the recorded testimony you have, or even what you did, what you might want us to hear that you didn't present today, we'll be glad to listen to that, and the task force will listen and they will pay attention.
Thank you.
I'd like to go around and give everybody an opportunity with a follow-up question. Mr. Pruitt?
I only have one, is that if you could indicate and give to us the names of those individuals who may have filed a grievance or sought medical treatment and they did not get it.
Well, I mean, I think we might have to do a little bit of groundwork in order to make that happen, but we can see what we can do. I know just from being just as impacted myself that you can submit those things all day. And the fact that, okay, the first uprising of this scale was done back in October, that lets you know that they have been trying to submit those MSRs for a while. You know what I mean? You get to a certain point and they wonder why people are upset that they're not getting any credit.
Okay, thank you. Senator Nasheed, do you have any questions?
Yes. Mr. Statton, I thank you for providing us with the information that you have just submitted today. This is not the first time that we've heard some of the things that you've mentioned. And so what you're saying is not falling on deaf ears, because I mean, this has been stated. Some of the things that that you stated have been mentioned before, right? But do you know that you want to be able to have those individuals released? You talked about individuals needing to be released at 65 years old or older. And that's one of your recommendations?
Well, no, what I was saying was that the detainees at the CJC that we speak to, they're not asking to be released. So I was speaking to their motives on why they would even lie about what's going on. What they're saying is they're not even releasing the people that are at risk for the COVID-19 virus, the people that are elderly or the people that have underlying conditions.
When you say they're not, you do know that the Justice Department or the city of St. Louis doesn't have authority to release anyone because they're under the court law. I mean, under the court rules, right? So all of those individuals that you want to be released, have they petitioned the courts to be released? Because I mean, if they petition the wrong people, then they won't be released. And I'm with you, they should be released, right? And so my question to you is, are the individuals that you believe and you feel need to be released and that you have spoken with, have they spoken with the courts? Because again, the city can't release anyone. The Justice Center cannot release anyone. They don't have that authority. They are under court order. And so that's the question that I'm asking.
Okay, and what I was saying is this. I personally haven't spoken to anyone that I feel like should be released. What I stated was that the detainees are saying that why isn't something being done in order to be able to create the opportunity for socially distance. So like I said, they watch television and they see what is being done other places, and somehow, some way, in other places, in different states, in prisons and in jails, people are being demanded, given bail, they've been able to leave in order to increase their ability to socially distance. And the detainees are asking, why aren't the Justice Center doing the same thing? I personally haven't spoken with anybody that I think should be released because we haven't seen people physically. We just have phone numbers and they call us on the phone. So I haven't seen anyone.
Well, just for the record, though, just for the record and make it practically clear, the Justice Center cannot release anyone because those individuals who are incarcerated, the detainees, are under the court orders. And so and I think that goes back to the public defender's office. I think that if individuals feel that they need to be released based on any health issues and concerns, that they need to be able to talk to their attorneys and see if the attorneys can go into the courts and get an emergency release or a release where they can be at home with some type of supervision. Okay, but just for the record, the department, I mean, the Justice Center cannot release anyone. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator.
Or the city of St. Louis. Okay.
Thank you, Senator. We have about 15 minutes left, so I'm gonna proceed. Were you done? I'm sorry, Senator, were you finished?
Yes, yes, thank you, Mr. Statton, for again presenting.
Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions?
I just have a comment. When we say things like other places are doing it and we're not, like the comment about releasing prisoners, we have to make sure that we're comparing apples and apples, and we don't know why somebody else did something and we're not doing it. But I do know the city released hundreds of people when the pandemic started. So I know some of that has been going on. I don't know what the criteria is to release somebody, like the senator said, maybe through health, because of health issues or something like that. But I did want it to be known that the city, has released some people, during the pandemic, and I'm not sure what the qualifications were in order to be released. So thank you. And thank you for your testimony, sir.
Right.
Tracy, do you have any follow-up questions?
No, I don't have any follow-up questions, just to follow up, like, I believe a bit of a clarification. So my understanding, he was not requesting that anyone be released. What he is saying is that the detainees are not requesting to be released. The concern more so is of people that need further assistance or have ailing issues and things of that nature. So I believe the pressure from the detainees and being incarcerated over time, after the uprising that happened before the last one, what I've known from speaking with some of the detainees is that they were fully aware of what happened after that uprising, right? So that people were maced, people were shipped off and things of that nature. So to even surpass that and create the last resisting was a sense of dire desperation, is what I've heard from the detainees that I have spoken with. So I just wanted to make that clarification that we're not requesting that anyone be released. He was making mention of the detainees' situation and how they feel as it relates to people with mental health issues, people that have ailing issues, that it's not about them being released, that they are being taken care of and those things are being addressed. And then also I wanted to add on to what I feel like one of the points that Expo would like to make mention of is that, we're talking about the overpopulation, and I know that people have made mention to the fact of the workhouse needing to be open due to that overpopulation. And just to provide a different solution is if we were able to move the court dates as they should be moved, that could be a solution to the overpopulation. So that's all I basically just wanted to add.
Thank you, Tracy. And please, I encourage you to shoot your recommendations by email to Brad over the weekend, so we can make sure we've got them in our final report for consideration. Brad, do you have any questions?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Pastor Norris, are you on? Alderman Vaccaro, can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
That's better, yes.
Okay, it really just depends on the spot I'm in. But so, I mean, here's what I guess there's so many different, whether someone's being held, on parole violations, there's so many different groups, again, that even when it for releases, and I agree with the senator, the city of St. Louis has no authority, but there are multiple different groups that control that. Because if someone's being held on parole violations, a lot of that, I'm going to wait till we go into closed session because I did a lot of research even on the people we talked about. So I'll wait till we're in closed session.
Okay.
If I could say just one more thing, I think that we're kind of missing the point. I think the point is, what is the Justice Center doing to ensure that these kind of need some type of safety from the COVID-19 virus? If it's not releasing people, if they have reached their limit, what other actions have they taken? The city has found that they have taken actions in public areas such as restaurants and bars and buses and gyms the city justice center is a public area, is not released, what are they doing to ensure the detainees' safety in COVID-19? That is the real issue.
Mr. Statton, out of all due respect, I don't think any of us are missing the mark. I think that we clearly hear you and we understand exactly what your concerns are and what you're trying to get at. So no, we're not missing the mark. But at the end of the day, we just wanted to hear from you. And again, thank you for coming to testify.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one more presenter this morning, and it is a representative from the Honorable Corey Bush's office. Is that representative on at the moment?
I am here.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here and informing our process. And what we've been doing this morning is allowing our presenters to present, and then I'll kind of do a round to see if people have follow-up or clarification questions. So if you would introduce yourself, and again, we really appreciate your time and participation with us.
First of all, I will not be before you long, I promise. I know you have about 10 minutes before you are ready to go into closed session. My name is Miranda Jones. I am the director for the Honorable Congresswoman Corey Bush. You know that we are very, very concerned and interested in work. Basically, we sent a letter to the mayor on February. And as a result, we did meet with her, Judge Edwards, class and team. I wanted to just stress that we are here to support the work of this task force. We are not going to read the entire letter that we sent on February 8th. Some of those have been answered, but we want to highlight for you all what we called for, and really was transparency and that humanity be kept at the forefront. You know, with Corey Bush, that the health concerns of those incarcerated are very, very important. And I am going to read the questions that we asked for in the letter, so that you all have an idea of questions that we asked. We also want to make sure that the information that is being disseminated is accurate and as detailed as possible. Before I read the questions, I do want to let you know that we did receive several calls regarding this issue. I won't be able to go into any details about names because of privacy, our privacy policies. However, some calls range from being denied proper health care to being denied essentials like toilet paper, as well as access to the commissary. So just know that, again, we are here to support your work as a task force, and we are really looking forward to your findings. The 10 questions that we raised in the letter that we sent on February 8th, and I'll read them very quickly. One was, based on the data available to the city, what were the COVID-19 testing, case rates, hospitalizations, and deaths among people detained at St. Louis City Justice Center and the St. Louis Medium Security Institution as of Saturday, February 6th? We have been told that those rates, what were those rates since the beginning of the pandemic? And will you commit to publicly disclosing this data and updating it daily on a Division of Corrections website? Number two, what public health information is being shared with incarcerated individuals, their family, and other visitors? How often are relevant updates being shared? Number three, what is the protocol for providing personal protective equipment and face masks to people detained at the St. Louis Justice Center and St. Louis Medium Security Institution? How much PPE and how many face masks are currently available? Is the use of PPE in line with the recommendation for the CDC? And number four, what is the current breakdown of post-convictions offenses within both the St. Louis City Justice Center and Medium Security Institution? Among those conviction offenses, what is the breakdown of the type of charge within both the Justice and Medium Security Institution? Further, what was the average length of time in detention prior to the pandemic? And what is the average length of time in detention as of today? And if there has been an increase, what factors have contributed to it? Number five, based upon the funds appropriated by Congress in the CARES Act, the City of St. Louis received $1.392 million through the Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance. And the question was, how specifically has the city utilized these funds to migrate the spread of COVID-19 in its jails? Number 6, what is the protocol for the use of segregation or solitary confinement, including maximum and average lengths of stay in segregation at the St. Louis City Justice Center, as well as the medium security institution? What is the status of those individuals who have been held in segregation as a result of the uprising on December 29th, 2020, January 1st, 2021, and February 6th, 2021? Number 7, what is the status of those individuals who have been transferred for St. Louis County to the St. Louis City Justice Center to the St. Louis Medium Security Institution following the uprising on January 1st, 2021? Number 8, as vaccines become available to incarcerated people in Missouri, what factors will guide vaccine distribution within cities' jails? And what are the city's plans for prioritizing the most vulnerable and achieving herd immunity among local jail population? Number 9, how has the city prioritized or facilitated the release of individuals, particularly those who are pregnant, medically vulnerable, or elderly and are awaiting trial at St. Louis City Justice Center, as well as the Medium Security Institution? And number 10, what is the protocol for temperature settings within the facilities at St. Louis at the Justice Center between the winter months of November and March, as well as during the summer months between June and September? Additionally, please provide the daily logs of the nighttime temperatures of the City Justice Center and the Medium Security Institution over the past few months. So those were the questions that we submitted on February 8th. Know that some of these questions have been answered. They did respond in terms of how face masks are being distributed, and that, all the prisoners were offered 4 face masks a week and those types of things. Again, we wanted to just share with you the questions that we raised, and that we are here again to support the work of this task force, and that we are really looking forward to the outcomes of what your report will be.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jones, for that input. And I believe we do have a copy of your letter, and
yes,
go into our record. Mr. Pruitt, do you have any questions for Ms. Jones?
No, Ms. Jones, I just have a comment. It would be great if the Congresswoman can include going forward to really take a look at this issue between the Public Defender's Office and the courts, as relates to, if they're representing those clients and they're making motions to the court to address the issues of those clients, to see whether it's the courts ignoring them or if they even are making requests. And I appreciate you being here from the beginning of the meeting all the way to the end. So I know you've heard everything. But again, that issue between the public defenders and the courts and them filing motions on behalf of their clients and how the courts is responding to them, I think that's a real critical issue that I would love to see somebody take a deeper dive into.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Senator Nasheed?
Hello, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I would like to ask a question, and I know we all know the different branches of government, right? And we know that the Congresswoman is on the federal level. We also know that there are federal detainees inside the Justice Center. My question to you, and you may not have it out right off, what has happened with those detainees that is held under the federal prison of Bureau? Have they reached out to the city to see was any of their detainees involved? And I know we have a contract with the feds, right, to hold them. So I'm just trying to see what type of conversation is being held with the city and the feds pertaining to their inmates that is being held in the Justice Department. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. So I don't know the conversation that has been had between the federal and the city. We did ask the question in our meeting about, how many of the detainees that were involved were federal and how many, do they know, how that works? Because we at one point heard that all of them were federal detainees.
Well, you can get that information because you're there. You oversee the, the federal
Right.
prison. So you can get that information real quick.
Yeah,
Quickly.
the answer that we got was that the way that the city works is that they mix the inmates. So at the point of that point, because we talked to them on February 8th, so this was right afterwards. At that point, they didn't have the information to tell us exactly who was who because they mixed those inmates. They don't have like a
when you say they, who you mean they?
They is this was according to Superintendent Glass. Is
Yeah,
the way
so
how they house the detainees. Yeah.
So what I'm asking you is, so that we can, if you can do this, we would like to hear from the Congresswoman's office to see if she can reach out, to the Federal Bureau of Prisons to see if they have had any contact with the city of St. Louis, being that they have a contract with the city, and if they're thinking about taking their contract or stripping their contract away from the city as a result of the uprise. I'm just trying to see, where we are with the partnership with the city and the feds as a result of those inmates, many of them who probably was a part of the uprise that's being held by the feds.
I got you. I got your question. I will find that out for you.
Is that it, Senator, for your questions? Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions?
I don't, but I appreciate and I concur with the senator. And thank you, Ms. Jones-Bush, for being here.
Tracy, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions at this time. And again, to echo what everyone else says, thank you, Ms. Jones, for being present this morning.
Alderman Vaccaro, can we hear you?
Yeah, I guess, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, I just, the one thing she said is right. They do not separate the federal, and because some of them have federal and state charges both. So they don't, at one point, I was told that it was all the federal prisoners on that floor, but they don't. They mix the prisoners. So there isn't one floor for just federal prisoners. And you also have prisoners that have both charges. So I just, so there's not one floor with just federal prisoners. I just wanted to make that statement.
Okay, thank you. Did Pastor Norris or Reverend Gray join us yet? I know Reverend Gray's trying to get on as soon as he can. Okay.
Pam?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Miranda?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, before you get off, I would like to speak with you offline after this, anytime today or tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Pruitt, did you have another question or comment?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Jones, for your time and for sitting through the entire meeting this morning. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, just some housekeeping things. We want to go into closed session to finish up on some of our security and confidentiality issues here in a second. But the chairman texted me and informed me that Public Safety Director Edwards would like us to submit a preliminary task force report to the city on or before Wednesday, 11th for review and get their suggestions for technical corrections, if any, with the goal to release it to the public on March 15th. And he would also like for no more than 3 task force representatives to meet with the city representatives the same day that we give them the preliminary report. And he wants us to confirm that process as soon as possible.
Well, we're not under his authority.
I'm just sharing the request.
Well, I'm just asking, like, how could he be requesting all this information when we're not under his authority? We're under the mayor's authority as a task force. So if you can ask, so if you can just tell me, is this here that the mayor give him the authority to ask for this information? Or, I mean, I don't know how this is working right now at this point, because I don't see how the director can be asking us for anything at a allotted time when we are not under his authority. We're under the mayor's authority as a task force.
Yeah, I will, I'll discuss that with Reverend Graves, the chairman.
Out of all due respect, Judge Edwards, I'm just basically, just making that known. He doesn't have any authority to be telling us to do anything. Okay. And so, out of all due respect. But if that's what the mayor wants, that's what she gets. But that's who authority we're under.
Exactly. And I think we should, I'd like Reverend Grave here for this discussion, even if we have to have another Zoom call later, Monday or whatever. I think the timeline fits with what we were trying to do as far as getting a preliminary report to you all for comments and edits. Then we'll have to have we were trying to do that by Tuesday, and then we have to make those changes, get it back out to you, give you time to look at that. And then we'll have to have a vote to approve the final document. We were trying to do that by next week. My initial reaction to this is if we're going to meet with him and his staff, it needs to be with our entire task force.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, I just want to make sure that, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as a task force by way of the mayor's request. And again, I'm not trying to slight, the public safety director. He probably should have been one of the individuals that should have been coming before us and testifying as well, being that he's over the Justice Department. I mean, that didn't happen, and we're about out of time. But at any rate, I just want to make sure that we're following the orders of the mayor and not getting too many hands involved, where we get in this bureaucratic mess like they have right in the Justice Department, where people telling people what to do and they don't have the authority to do so. I mean, this seems like we're not gonna go there. I mean, we see that happening right now in the Justice Center, where everybody's a chief and nobody's an Indian. And I'm saying that our chief is the person that decided to put this task force together, and that's who orders we'll be following. And she already gave us the recommendations of when she wanted done. And I think that we've done a great job shooting forward and listening to the voices and the concerns of so many people that have a vested interest in wanting to make sure that not only the correctional officers and the building and the facility and the inmates are all functioning in accordance to health and safety. Thanks.
Agreed. Okay, does someone want to make a motion about going?
Well, I was going to ask, can we take a 20-minute break before we go into closed session so that I can get into a better position? And
unfortunately, the posting is from 9 to noon with a closed session within that time. So we can't go past noon.
okay, that's fine, then I'll be okay.
Sorry.
Madam
So
Chair,
I'll make,
Yes, Aldrin.
I was going to make the motion that we move to closed session.
and I'll second that.
Second.
You have to join the chat room, remember, as soon as they put it up there.
I don't see my, oh, I guess I'm here.
I don't know what everybody did. You came out of the.
I think it was the motion was not proper to go into closed session.
Oh, okay.
So we came out and we'll go back in. once everybody gets over here.
I think we're all here.
Except for the visitors, yeah.
Can't hear you, Pam.
Are we accepting the motion now?
Hold on, hold on.
Okay, we had a motion to close by Alderman Boyd, a second by Alderman Vaccaro. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the meeting is officially closed. We'll need to go to the breakout room again.
We have reconvened in open session. We're going to ask Mr. Brad Hump if he would give us our calendar for next week.
So the draft report will be provided to the task force by the end of the day, Tuesday at the latest. Feedback due by the end of the day, Wednesday. On Thursday, we will have a meeting at 9 a.m. to review the draft report and have discussion on the recommendations. Friday, with the anticipation of a final report, we will have a meeting at 1 p.m. That will be the vote for the final report.
All right, and we just want to make sure that on the Tuesday morning meeting, there will be an opportunity for closed session during that time. And on the Friday 1 p.m. meeting, there will also be an opportunity for a closed session at that time as well, just so that we have that. And so we're anticipating our goal is to be able to vote by on these recommendations by next Friday. Any other business to come before the task force? Seeing no other business to come before the task force, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
It's been moved by Alderman Boyd, seconded by Mr. Adolphus Pruitt. You've heard the motion. Are you ready for the question? All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion is carried. Thank y'all very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Thursday.
Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Bye.